Okay, we're about to dive into one of the wildest stories in all of history. Seriously, it's about how a single private company, yeah, a company with its own army, ended up conquering an entire subcontinent. This isn't some movie plot. This is the real, incredible story of the East India Company and its takeover of India. So let's get right into it.
I mean, it sounds completely made up, right? Think about it. A company that started out with just a few ships hoping to trade for some spices somehow ends up ruling over millions of people and a massive empire. So, how on earth did that happen? That's the huge question we're going to tackle today.
So let's set the scene. We're going back to the early 1600s. And you really need to forget any modern ideas about British power, because back then, India was the economic powerhouse. We're talking about the Mughal Empire, a place famous for its incredible textiles, its spices, just unbelievably wealthy. And it's into this world that a few European traders show up. And get this, they didn't arrive as conquerors. Not even close. They were basically just customers. And when the British East India Company was officially created back in 1600, they were actually late to the party. They weren't stepping into some empty market. Nope. The Portuguese and the Dutch were already there, well established, and it wasn't long before the French showed up too, starting their own trading company. So right from the get-go, this was never just a simple trading mission. It was a fierce, high-stakes competition. And this is a really important point to grasp. The company didn't show up with guns blazing. It was the exact opposite. They were basically petitioners, humbly asking the super powerful Mughal emperors for permission to set up shop and trade. Their mission was simple: profit, not politics. All they wanted was a piece of India's markets, not an inch of its land. But as you can probably guess, that didn't last. Over the next century and a half, that simple mission, it got twisted into something completely different. The line between being a business and being a political power got blurrier and blurrier until the company's ambitions shifted. It wasn't just about markets anymore. It was about controlling land. And this slide really shows you just how insane that transformation was. On one side, you've got their humble start in 1615, just asking to build a factory. But then fast forward 150 years to 1765. Now the company isn't asking for anything. It's being granted the right to collect taxes from millions of people. That right was called the Diwani of Bengal. And let me be clear, that's not just a trading permit. That's basically the power of a government. The company had become the state. So the big question is, how did they make that leap? How do you go from trader to tax collector? To really get that, you have to zoom in on one single pivotal year, a year that honestly changed everything. That year was 1757. So what happened in 1757? This was the year of the famous Battle of Plassey. The company's own private army defeated the local ruler of Bengal. And that one victory, well, it was the key that unlocked the rest of India. It let them put a puppet ruler in place, and even more importantly, it gave them control over Bengal's massive treasury. So what did they do with all that cash? They built a bigger army. And what did they do with that bigger army? They conquered more territory. It became this terrifyingly effective cycle of conquest, funded by conquest. All right, so for the next 100 years, the company's power just grew and grew, relentlessly. But here's the thing. This corporate-style rule was often brutal, it was exploitive, and resentment was just simmering under the surface all across India. And then in 1857, it all boiled over. Yeah, 1857. This was the year everything changed. A huge rebellion just exploded across northern India. We're talking about a violent, massive uprising against the company's rule. Now, in the end, the British did manage to crush the rebellion, but it was an absolute turning point. For the East India Company, the writing was on the wall. Their days were numbered. You see, the sheer scale of this uprising absolutely terrified the British government back in London. They basically looked at the situation and decided that letting a private company try to run an entire subcontinent was just way too dangerous and unstable. So they stepped in. In 1858, the government took over. The East India Company was dissolved, poof, gone, and all of its territories were handed over to the British Crown. This was the end of the Company Raj and the start of the British Raj. But swapping a corporate boss for a royal one didn't end the story. Not at all. It just changed who the fight was against. The next 90 years or so would see the rise of this incredibly powerful movement, all focused on one single goal: freedom. And this fight for independence was long and incredibly difficult. It wasn't just one single event, it was more like a wave of resistance that just kept building and building. You had the early political protests, but you also had these moments of just profound tragedy, like the Amritsar massacre, that really lit a fire under the independence cause. And then you had these iconic acts of defiance, like Gandhi's famous Salt March. By the time the 1940s rolled around, the demand was loud, clear, and unmistakable. Quit India. Now, after World War II, things really started to change. A battered and weakened Britain just couldn't hold on to its massive empire anymore. Indian independence wasn't just a dream now, it was finally within reach. But this freedom would come at a devastating cost, leading to one of the most painful and violent moments in the region's entire history. And when the end finally came, it happened incredibly fast. Britain agreed to leave, but there was a condition. The subcontinent had to be divided, or partitioned. So on August 14th, 1947, the new nation of Pakistan was born. And then, just one day later, at the stroke of midnight, India finally achieved its long fought-for freedom. So a story that kicked off with a simple search for profit ends with the birth of two new nations. Just think about that. A single company's ambition led to an empire rising and falling, which in turn sparked a freedom movement that literally redrew the map of the world. It's such a powerful reminder of how tangled up commerce and power can get. And it leaves us with a question that feels more relevant today than ever. What is the true price of profit?